Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Around the Lens Real Reviews. With me, of course, is Zach Roberts, and I'm David Murphy. And this week we're going to be talking about Homegrown.
Oh, well, we're domestic terrorists and this and that. If you think DC was bad, just wait. Just wait.
A documentary about January 6th protesters and the white national movement in America, especially during, of course, the uh, most, I would say, divided time in our nation, which was around the 2020-2021 election. You turned me on to this film initially, Zach, so I'll let you kind of introduce kind of what the story does and follows and kind of what, you found interesting enough about it to kind of recommend it as sort of a film to review.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's a obviously it's a documentary that follows. It's I should first say directed by Michael Premo, written by or story consultant. Let's see, Lynn Nottage. A whole bunch of producers that, but the reason that I even paid attention to is that a colleague of mine who covers kind of the same world, Jim Arcott, fantastic. I think he's Reuters photojournalist who also does video, obviously, but he has this. He's one of the guys, kind of like him and Mark Peterson are two of the guys that are able to just get into whether it be the club meeting, the like hangout with these people and just document them where in a way the people on the far right like in a way that I certainly am not because I'm loud on the internet and they end up figuring out who I am and so he's one of the few guys out there, fantastic photojournalist. It's definitely work with his work. He's done some groundbreaking work with like NPR, I think, really as well, some like long form work. And but this is, I think that I can't speak because I actually don't. We haven't talked to any of the filmmakers yet. I'm setting that up for sometime, hopefully later in the week. And but this is basically following a couple J6 riot, protesters and and Proud Boys. And I guess I'm trying to think of whether there's. I think they're mostly just Proud Boys and kind of activists, right wing activists in general, following them as they in the lead up to January 6th, following them going to like, the Million MAGA March in DC, a couple weeks before J6 and following them at home and, and seeing how they interact with their kids and kind of like you learn who they are as people. And then you kind of like literally for at least one of the guys, for Chris Quaglen, you literally watch him from behind as he basically breaks into the Capitol, or breaks into the building. I forget whether he physically makes it into the Capitol, but like he gets to, basically gets into fights with some police officers and things like that. And it's fascinating to see kind of all the behind the scenes things that led up to that. And that's what this film does incredibly well. To there's a meme of that the J6ers, the pardoned J6ers, are really trying hard to push is that J6 wasn't as violent as they say it was. J6ers are one pro cop, like they're not violent, and that whether it be Antifa or something, basically they were set up to do what they did on J6. This film shows, if you had any doubt whatsoever, it shows that all of that is a lie because it literally shows them setting it up. It shows them talking about it the night before. It shows him planning it. It shows him trying to incite more people to do things, and it shows them physically breaking into the Capitol and doing things like that, that you saw on television on that day and for every couple of weeks on the news ever since. And so I think it's one of those films that only certain filmmakers could ever make this to get that trust that you'd have to be able to get access in their families and their houses and kind of just to talk for hours. Very clearly these are just long conversations as they're building their homes and doing different things around the house, seeing their kids. And I think it's an incredible piece of filmmaking. And there's really no voiceover. There's no I don't think there's any voiceover. Yeah, no, there's no voiceover. And so it's all in their voice. And it does not feel like the filmmakers did any kind of pushes in one way, shape, or form. You know, I mean, like usually sometimes you can see even in a film, a documentary film that has no voiceover, no kind of narrative, voice of God kind of thing going on, or even like title cards or stuff like that. Like there's kind of like a narrative, you know, sarcasm or something, something kind of going on, especially in these films. This one doesn't have it all, and it doesn't need it because they say everything that you dream. If I, as a filmmaker, as a person who covers these world, I would dream of these of people of getting video of these guys saying things like, "Yeah, let's go break into the Capitol." Come on, guys, like on camera the night before, because it was like, oh, it was supposed to be just a momentary thing, and everybody just decided to go in. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, no, absolutely. That kind of level of access, right,
yeah, yeah,
is pretty significant. And honestly, if they didn't have it, it wouldn't have made
yeah,
the documentary wouldn't exist, honestly,
yeah.
because it would have been too far from an outsider's point of view. And, while watching this, I kept on thinking about you, Zach, because, you're this person who covers a lot of this stuff. You're, I would say, integrated pretty well into the society to the point where I think, if you were to do your own documentary on a similar style subject, I think you'd be successful at it just because you've made those contexts. These people are used to you. And it's probably a lot easier for you to blend in for obvious
Mhm.
reasons into their kind of lifestyle. Would you kind of see that, in terms of
Yeah.
something you would want to do in the future because of your access and
I mean, it's
because you've
it's
been covering
definitely,
this story for so long?
if I wasn't working on, I mean, my amongst all my friends who are at all my friends who are journalists, I'll say photojournalists.
Yeah.
I always have to preface that. All my friends who are at J6 covering it, um, they all continually poke at me. It's like, oh, where were you on J6, Zach? I was in Atlanta.
Oh,
And so if I wasn't making the film that would turn out to be Vigilantes, which I'm obviously very proud of and very happy,
yeah.
I would have been there, and I wouldn't, and I don't think I probably would have done something like this. And there's other people that have attempted to do this. I've seen other films that, whether it be, I don't think anything on specifically J6, but like on people in the far right up into like going into a big, prepping and kind of all the stuff before there's some big moment, protest or whatever. And my personal problem is that some of them have a familiarity of what I write about and what I write and what I publish. And some of them just know my photos and love my photos. Like there's a handful of Proud Boys that were using photos of mine for their parlor biopics or whatever, like the things, which is always like, I'm not quite sure whether I should be happy about that somebody loved my photo that much, or also obviously it helps access, but it's also a little like, oh, this is awkward.
Guys, this wasn't meant to
So,
be complimentary, all right? I
yeah,
wasn't trying
no,
to
no,
present you
no,
in a good
no, no.
light.
There's this one photo I have at a Richmond. Every year in Richmond, there's a lobby day for the Second Amendment, and they one year, I think it was 2020, the first year I went, there was like Proud Boys, militia members. There's thousands of people. It's a huge, unbelievably huge turnout. And I took this photo that I thought of. There's this very tall Proud Boy, and I think Enrique Tarrio was the leader at a given point, and then another Proud Boy. No, anyway, it doesn't matter. And I thought it was a scary looking photo, but of course they loved that. So I mean, that's also something that's fascinating about this film because there's kind of a joke meme amongst journalists where it's just like, wait, I worked on this story for 6 months and then he just tweeted it out. And it just continually throughout this entire thing where he's showing guy like I don't think spoilers if you know anything, but like there's one of the characters, the main character, kind of who ends up being the main character in this film, also vandalizes the Black Lives Matter
Hmm.
mural that's on the road
Yeah.
in New York City. And that was kind of a who did this, and it was a thing for a while. And he's like, they show setup on him doing it and like
Hmm.
prepping it and planning it and doing everything,
Hmm.
and so it's just one of those things where it's just like that the level of wanting to be famous for this type of thing is that like there's not like a extraordinarily large number of people within the right wing movements that are this stupid. I don't know. I mean, I would say. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say whether it's stupid or whether they think they're so right in what they're
Yeah.
doing that it's justified. And so it's a you're lucky when you can get somebody to talk to that on camera that isn't just there's a handful of J6ers and kind of like militia member, Proud Boys in the world that have talked to me and just been like really admitting what they do and who they are and everything like
Hmm.
that. And it's one of those always question whether or not they realize what they're saying is bad or whether they care or what. And so this film is just like kind of chock pack with that. So I mean, if you don't know a whole ton about like the Proud Boys, especially, I mean, I think it's just Proud Boys that follow. So, um, if you don't know a whole ton about them, this is kind of like a really good kind of inside look because so many things focus on like the leadership and the ridiculous characters that are in this, and this is like kind of the a film that's mostly about just kind of the guys that show up to an event and try to get into fights, which is what the Proud Boys are. They're not, Enrique Tarrio is a pretty smart person when you interview him. The founder of the Proud Boys, I'm blanking. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. He co-founded Vice magazine. He's a very smart person when you talk to him. Whether or not they're actually, whether they're actually smart, we can have arguments about that.
Hmm.
But and these guys, and so they know what to not say. I mean, like that's my level of smart when you're talking to somebody on the far right. It's just like what to say to a random camera person that you don't know, or at least that you don't know as well as you should.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that a lot of them may know who I am or recognize me in general. Like, Enrique Tario definitely recognizes me at this point and the thing. And he has as far as I can tell, I'm way too small of a fish for him to give a damn about. And so, which is good because I get access, to these guys in a way that, I wouldn't if they realized, I don't know. Oh, on the other hand, I don't think they give a damn. I don't think they could read my Twitter. They could read, people's, but, thankfully, the producers of this film, who I know, like, especially Jim Market, like, they do what they need to be. They're absolute professionals,
Yeah.
online and everywhere else. And so, because this is their job is to get access to
Right.
these people, and they succeeded like crazy on this one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting to your point about like why would this guy be so open to what he was
Yeah.
doing to his crimes, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a mixture of hubris and ego,
Hmm.
wherein, he thinks he's in the right?
Yeah.
To the point where it doesn't matter that he's breaking the law because he's doing what he thinks is right because it has to
Yeah.
get done.
Yeah.
And only it's after the fact when, the sort of push comes to shove and he has to be held accountable for his
Yeah.
actions, does he have any sort of inkling or degree of
Yeah.
remorse. And you said there's no narration, which there isn't, but there is a title card at the
Hmm.
end
Yeah.
that talks about what happened to the
Hmm.
characters, I should say, after everything is said and done. And he had what was his name? Chris? I can't remember his
Yeah,
name.
Chris. Yeah, Chris is
Yeah.
the main guy that we follow. Yeah.
Yeah, we follow him throughout the whole documentary, it feels like, and he's has like an arc, if you will, showing like his complete disregard for his wife, his pregnant
Hmm.
wife, and their child, and everything he's willing to lose. He doesn't lose
Yeah.
it until he loses it. And then he's thankfully for, I guess, his perspective,
Mhm.
pardon, he gets that stroke of luck being pardoned. Otherwise, he'd still be in prison right now.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, it's like when you are so locked into what you think is right,
Hmm.
you just want to document it. You just want it historically recorded because how can I be wrong? What I'm doing is in my
Yeah. Yeah.
bones is right. So
Yeah.
obviously it doesn't matter that, there might be laws against this, or at least you're not thinking about the time
Mhm.
that you're doing it. When I did a similar sort of story documenting protesters on both sides of an issue back in like
Mhm.
2009, and I was covering both left wing and right wing protesters, which kind of got me in a little bit of trouble because one side would see me talking to the other side, and
Yeah.
then what that side then said, "Well, we don't want you to cover us anymore." But like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
why are you
Yeah.
pushing me away? I'm trying to tell both your story, and like, we don't trust
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, fine. Well, I'll tell the story I can tell with the footage I have.
Hmm.
And so I did a sort of feature piece on a left wing person who was very far left. Like I would say the left leaning equivalent to the Chris character, someone who admitted to doing vandalism and things like that on camera and in audio transcripts and
Hmm.
interviews because again, when they're so radically
Yeah.
emotionally connected to their cause, all that sort of common sense goes out the window, which
Yeah.
makes for
Yeah.
great coverage and great footage, which is what we got in this film.
Mhm.
But it's a very sort of interesting mindset that people put themselves in, that they lose all common sense, or the camera must make it, where they're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, sure.
Well, I think that they also I talked to so many that still believe beforehand that they were to some level untouchable, that they, and not even that Trump would pardon them in the future or Trump would ever, but I mean, like, you have this the moment I wrote down, like one of the guys, one of the Proud Boys, he says you could shoot somebody and not get pulled over. During one of the parades, I think it was out on Long Island, that they were setting up, and you can see that, like, even in so many of the in so much of this footage where it's just the right wing will do something. I mean, there's the one of the night, I think it was the night before J6. I'm trying to remember. No, it was the night, one of the nights of the Million MAGA marches, and they were getting into this fight with a self-proclaimed anti-fascist who was literally just trying to have like a discussion with them, and didn't come up, with any violence or whatever. He was on a bike, and he's surrounded by and mobbed by all the Proud Boys in front of a police car with a police officer sitting inside of it. And finally, the police officer just gets out after the kid had been knocked to the ground. They had tried to destroy his bicycle. The police officer gets out and was just like, come on, guys, just move back, move back, move back. And then he just disappears, and they attack him again, knock him down to the ground, and assault him multiple times. And that's what it is like in my experience in DC, where it's just like you could have my experience covering the far right in America 100% is that, um, and I've talked about this a lot for years on the podcast and whatever else, but it's just like, is that they know that they can get away with things that the left couldn't dream of getting away with. I mean, and I think that's been pretty well documented at this point. You know what I mean? Like, of what the left has tried, things the left would try to do. If the left did J6, come on, like, guns would have been fired. And I think that it's hard. I've never talked to anybody with like a brain that like says otherwise, that believes otherwise, including some of these J6ers. They know that, like, the police are more on their side, and you hear the voices on J6. I've heard multiple videos. My friends have taken, or whatever. We have law enforcement, whether or not they're trying to like calm the guys down by like being friendly or whatever. But I saw it for years. The police would do everything from in DC. The police would do everything from literally helping Proud Boys with directions on their like march through the city, terrorizing people as they go. And like, I have that documented. Like, it's a thing that happened, that they show them in directions on their phone where to go to get to the Harry's, the bar that, a lot of this film takes place in, and which is it was a Proud Boys bar and hotel where they would always stay. And and so it's just like they know that they can get away with this, and they know that to some level they would away with it. I think that, like, the moment they saw consequences after J6, and such a long time after J6, the fact that almost nobody was arrested on J6 on the day is insane. Like, there was only a handful of people that were actually arrested that day. Most people were let go. They were brought to the hospital. I mean, there's this amazing moment. This is like, talking about so much of the film. There's this amazing moment where, um, where Chris is literally up against one of the doors attacking a police officer, and then he looks behind him and sees one of the protesters was like laid unconscious. I don't know what his I don't know which person this was. And he goes to the police officer and goes, this man needs medical attention, expecting the police officers to enter into the fray and help this man that had just been attacking them in a brutal way that was currently ongoing. And it's just like their complete and total separation of the idea that they should see consequences for the things that they are not just they did, or planning to do, but were actively doing, is something that needs to be studied in a lab, because it's so I can't imagine. It's like beyond. I've worked in daycare before, and I've known toddlers that have a better kind of like, oh, I just did a bad thing, I am going to have to sit in the corner or put my hands on my, like, do whatever. I'm going to get punished. I'm going to have a timeout. And it's not even that level. It's amazing how much this movie does, that documentary does this so well, to show it in just in a raw way, because all the characters that they chose to follow are exactly that, are just like so far gone down this line. It's stunning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the picture of what it takes to create a radical is just
Yeah,
so on display here to see the radicalization in real
yeah,
time by these people. It's just I think hopefully it's a cautionary tale. Hopefully it's something that, people who allowed this to happen, allowed it to fester and, propagate so badly as it did, you
yeah.
know, will perhaps step in if it becomes something again, because it will happen again. I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to see sparks fly in 2028 or 2029 or whatever.
2026 is
Um,
coming up. Is it later this year,
yeah,
buddy?
this is going to be I think how do you say, the test bed for what's going to
Yeah,
happen
yeah,
in 2028,
yeah,
2029,
yeah.
because, there are people who want to hold on to power and will do anything to keep it. And, if you can rally a group so fervently toward your cause as they did, my only hope is that perhaps those who were, rallied and burned will be advocates for not falling for it again, and not being so easily swayed. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, how do we do this to ourselves in our country over
I
and
mean,
over
so
again?
the only positive out of all of this is that they believe now that almost every large rally, if somebody was to try to organize J6 again, they would believe it's a Fed. They call J6 the Fed surrection, as in they believe either the Feds or Antifa or the Fed and Antifa or whatever, anyone but J6ers did.
Hmm.
Anyone but like people who you saw in this film that organized it. I mean, Enrique Tarrio was not physically there on J6. By the way, he's already banned from Washington D.C. again. I caught him on Jason on the just last month. I interviewed him very briefly walking down Pennsylvania Avenue or whatever Constitution, I think, towards the Capitol. And I was just like, "What is this like coming back 5 years? You weren't here that day, but like, what is this like?" And he was like, "Yes, famously, I was not in the Capitol on January 6th. This is the first time I've been back since because he was banned from entering DC because of a federal hate crime that he committed, and the Proud Boys are technically owned. The copyright's now technically owned by a Washington DC black church, or church at least. I forget if it's a black church or not, but because he burned ripped up and burned a Black Lives Matter flag and on after one of the Million MAGA marches, and um, and so it's fascinating. He's already now banned again. I forget what his most recent thing, why he was banned again. Some judge was like, "You're out of DC. You can't be in the state." And so it's uh, it's fascinating watching these guys that were there on that day, and I've seen a handful of these people since, and so I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I thought this was a great movie. I would give it definitely, an F4, an F2.8, in
I
terms of our
forgot we're doing
scale.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Very, very
yeah,
gripping documentary that kept me, interested and engaged the entire time, and really shone a light on something that I don't think we see very often, but
mhm,
which we should see more of,
yeah,
because it's just a sobering view of what some people believe in their heart and bones, and will go to whatever lengths to, I don't know, act on those beliefs, right?
yeah.
Regardless of the moral or legal implications of that. And so hopefully it acts as a cautionary tale for those who are willing to watch it, and,
Yeah.
not a rallying cry for
Yeah.
future people who might
It
be inspired by it.
it is interesting. I would say, for me, it's a 1.8. It's such a great film. I think that it does exactly something that's needed in the story of J6. The unfortunate thing is one of the stories about this film's release is that it hasn't been able to find a release. Is that it played the festivals, it did really
Mm-hmm.
well in a couple festivals, and they had to release it on, which I had the same experience with Vigilantes.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's wild to me that that's a film this important couldn't find a home on any of the streaming, at least we couldn't find a deal. It's always hard to
Mm-hmm.
tell. Um, but I mean, like for my film, they just wouldn't like we would have given it to Netflix. We would have just been like, done, take it,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But they
Please
wouldn't even
platform our
take it.
film.
Yeah, no, I mean because we're a nonprofit, and like we talked about in this previous episode about how nonprofit filmmaking funding comes along. Basically, it's like a lot of times it's just to get this film seen, and so the funding comes in the front, and
Mm-hmm.
then later on. you're not necessarily looking, you know, maybe what you're really looking for is the financing of the next film, you know,
Hmm.
and so it's wild that this is on. It's we'll have the, you know, links in the show notes and everything like that. But
Sure.
it's on a platform. What is it? Sorry.
Gather,
Yeah,
Gather
Gather. Yeah,
movies.
yeah. And so it's you know, it's a subscription. It's you know, kind of you pay to rent it for 30 days, and you can watch it on different platforms. I think they have an
Hmm.
app on like Roku and stuff like that.
You watch on
But
Apple TV.
yeah, okay, there you go. And so it's interesting to see. I've seen other people who I know have come out with films about the far right and kind of following characters and stuff like that. And they haven't also been able to find a home for anything. And so
Mm.
it's very interesting how something that is so, it's not like it went away. It's not like there's a time period between, there's a time period after Charlottesville, after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, and that the news media really didn't want to cover this stuff in a real way. Like there's two different sites that like publish my work continually, and then they both and simultaneously said, we're going to take a break from covering the far right because we don't want to give them attention. We don't give them a spotlight type of thing. And obviously I could not disagree with that more, but it's, interesting to see. I'm curious on what's happening because this is not like a boring treatise on history or anything like that. This is an action-packed thing.
Hmm.
The note that I should add, the one note about like on the filmmaking is that the camera people brave as hell, like
Hmm.
keeping things in focus, keeping things in shot and in frame in the middle of something like January 6th, or just even in the kind of, you know, when you're protesting and you're marching and there's like all these things around you. But I do want to note is there's this one amazing shot, which I should have taken a screenshot of it and asked if we could share it, of NJ6 when the scrum, when the crush happens right off the bat. There's one shot of the sound guy, which I can't believe they had a sound guy with like a boom at J6, which is probably why the sound is so good in this because like you're
Hmm.
hearing conversations that are like 5 feet away, you know, that I don't think that they knew was getting picked up. I think that's like something that's really significant, like conversations that two Proud Boys were having, just like off the cuff kind of stuff that really made this film and kind of tells you the way that they talk to each other and how serious they are about things and kind of their dark humor and stuff. You pick up perfectly because the sound guy is absolutely amazing. Like it's a real testament to hiring a good sound guy with a good boomer operator. But there's this amazing shot at G6 where the sound guy is just like completely crushed in, and
Oh
he just has
no.
this look of oh no on his face, like which I've been there. Like obviously not at J6, but like on other things where it's just like you look at another photographer, or you look at another whatever, and be like, I made poor decisions like about being in this spot, and so like it is. It's you know it's a very patient film that allows everything to kind of build to this big crescendo, and it's truly amazing. Like especially afterwards, because you would think that some of these characters would have like, yeah, that just happened. I just participated in that. I don't want to keep being on camera, and then they
Hmm.
decide, yeah, fuck it, we're gonna talk about it and talk about talk about how oh yeah, and it's before they went to jail too, because there's a long time that the DOJ took, you know, Merrick Garland took to get off his fucking ass and literally prosecute the people that broke into the Capitol and tried to overthrow the United States government, you know. But it's yeah, it's fascinating that they kind of stuck with it, you know, in a way that like usually you're like, oh, maybe they had a contract or something like that, like if it was a reality show. But it's like this is a documentary film. They don't have, you know, they're not contractually obligated to keep talking to these people, but they're like, go ahead. One person that was noticed that, and they never mentioned it, which I think was such a good decision. His wife, Chris's wife, is just never on camera, nowhere to be
Hmm.
seen,
Yeah.
and just and there's that one phone call that's like so sad about
Hmm.
where she's saying something along the lines of, or he's repeating what she's saying, which is like, remember, you have a kid, you have a kid on the way, and you're making decisions about that. And he's like, fuck it, I'm going to go into all these things. And it's so, it's just so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, again, it's the mindset. It gives you a really crystal clear image of the mindset of someone who's delusional
Yeah.
and who has been completely sort of brainwashed by this cause that they think they
Yeah.
have to support to the point that they are, disregarding their family and their, future,
Hmm.
newborn child to support it. And it's
Yeah.
just it's a very, stark picture of the types of people who are part of this organization and part of these movements.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't want to necessarily say that those only exist on the right because they don't. Those exist on the left as well. And I think those exist amongst the spectrum of people on either
Hmm.
side. But to see it so vehemently displayed here in this film, I think is eye-opening, and again should be a textbook study on, I would say, radicalization in America and
Yeah.
what caused the division. And yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't care about my family. I just care about this cause. And wow, you
Yeah.
are so lost, so far away.
Yeah. Especially having it's interesting because he mentions he has his wife is Asian, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then
Something like that.
while he's marching along the street, he yells at a Hispanic woman, "Are you legal?"
God.
And so it's just like the dissidents, like it is. I'm trying to remember where the conversation I was having recently about like whether they're, oh no, but what am I talking about? It's literally in the film where they're talking about how it's like, well, you're a bunch of racists, like we didn't know that. With the Black Lives Matter activist who rode with them a little bit, Jakari, I think it was her name. Um, and they were having a conversation about how we have a lot of people of color, obviously not my words, not theirs, in our, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, in the Proud Boys, so and so's wife is Hispanic, or I forget what they said. And she goes, well, you got to know that, she's like trying not to make a scene out of it, which is like, I've
Hmm.
been in that situation. I've literally gotten into arguments with Proud Boys about this, where it's just like, no, you can have a Hispanic girlfriend and still be a racist bag of trash. I mean,
Hmm.
like, not only you could possibly, it's not just one race, or you could have a black girlfriend, or you could be black, or you could be whatever and still be a racist, could be, racist, especially maybe you're not racist towards Hispanic people, but you're racist against Asians and whatever, or black people and things like that. And so, like, those conversations that were really, really incredible because, I don't think that they play out in at dinner tables the way that they do here, where like, dinner table is just like, okay, we're gonna let Uncle Bob say what he's gonna say, and we're gonna just move the hell on,
Hmm.
and maybe we don't come back to Thanksgiving. We don't go back down to Florida again this next year.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, but yeah, no, it's yeah, it's so good.
Indeed. Well, if anybody's interested in watching it, because it isn't, like you said, on any sort of major streaming platform, they should go to homegrown.film. That's the easiest way to get access to the film and, go support independent media until hopefully it gets picked up by somebody. I mean, I just can't believe that no platforms want it, or that you can't get it on Amazon, at least a VOD. I mean, it just boggles my mind that this, unless all of these kind of companies are trying to steer away from controversy, but Netflix loves
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. So I mean, I can't believe they wouldn't want to
I mean, if this
post it
was,
on
I
their
mean,
platform.
it's something I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine who's working on a documentary, having to do with a lot of not J6ers, but like far right figures and, guns and stuff like that. And we were kind of having the conversation over the last couple of years that he's been making this thing because he's still literally making it, still filming it and things like that. And that originally it was supposed to be a film, and then he was just like, I've been following these guys for multiple years. I don't know how I make this a film. And like, it's like he would talk to some people and whatever. And it's just like, it actually very much probably a better chance of becoming a multi-part series. Because if you look at some of the documentaries that are like, especially HBO really loves them, where it's just like, you see a lot of documentaries that should just be one film. I mean, like they really drag out. There's that one about the oh my God, the Pepsi where the guy won a jet. He earned enough token, points or whatever back in the 90s or whatever to win a jet, and that was like somehow like a four-part series. And it's just like, okay, that's maybe like a short film, but okay. like,
Hmm.
but it's just like I think that like that's where unfortunately a lot of these things are. But the problem is that you got to make as a filmmaker, you got to make the decision: does it need to be this? Is it that the way people are going to want to watch it? just because, streamers want things that they can pay. If I can pay $1 million or whatever, a number for a 4-part, 5-part, 1 hour long an episode kind of documentary series that we can release slowly, or pay $2 million for a 1 million, just a one, or pay $500,000 for one film that, is going to have if it misses the wrong weekend, if it doesn't do well, it doesn't whatever, it just kind of, goes away and nobody ever watches it, even if it is a good film that drops on one of their networks. Yeah, I can see why they'd want to go for like a multi-part series that at least they have multiple chances, even if it is less good filmmaking, to have where they're really just kind of draining out the scenes. But yeah, no, I mean, it kind of sucks because like this is like such a proponent for physical media, like this used to be a way that, at least you could make the money on the back end where you're selling DVDs. That's the way that, the guy I used to work for, like we paid for all of our films and all of our work by selling a $30 DVD or $50 DVD, like PBS does, or at least used to. And, that's so many people used to do that. Now you can't do it because look, I tried to give people DVDs and they're like, I don't have a DVD player. So I'm like, which is hates me. I have all of these DVDs up there. So yeah, but, yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I think Zach, we both highly recommend you all watch Homegrown. So go check it
Mhm.
out on your video on demand service, homegrown.film. Support the filmmakers, and again, like I said, hopefully maybe we'll get a physical release. Maybe that a thing they can do to raise money for their next film or for this.
Yeah.
Sell it on Blu-ray or whatnot. But anyway, Zach, thanks for hanging out and
Yep.
great time chatting with you about this film. And look for us on the next film whenever it comes out. I don't know. We should probably pick one. Maybe we should hint at something we're gonna real. Hey, how about that Melania film? Should we watch that? That'd be a
I
hoot.
don't I just don't want to be seen in a theater. I've so many friends that cover this world, cover this type of thing and had to go see it. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I would rather go.
It'll be on
I literally,
Amazon like in a
I,
week. So I
I
mean,
told,
you
I
can
told
just
him, I
just
told a
wait for it
friend
to
of
get
mine,
on
I'm like,
it.
I would rather get tear gassed than watch this, for an hour and a half and watch this theater. As far as I can tell, it's also horrible. Like it's just not a good film.
Yeah.
Just one of the descriptions of Melania was just like the film focuses like 30 minutes of her getting ready for there's these famous photos of her. She's wearing this big hat on inauguration day on 20 in 20 for 2025 where she's wearing this hat and it's like covering her face and they're the Hamburglar metaphor. If you search the photo, you'll remember it. And supposedly the back half of the film is basically all about her picking out this outfit, getting the hat fitted, and then wearing it. It's supposed to be this outside outfit, but if you remember, they had the inauguration inside, so that's why it's so weird that she's like wearing this intense outfit inside that doesn't show any of her face. So yeah, yeah, great filmmaking there by noted serial sexual abuser Brett Ratner. Which is also another thing about why I don't want to go see the film because then it gives money to that piece of crap. So yeah.
What we should do a watch party. You and me, we watch the film live and give our feedback on it. That way we don't
Oh
have to
God.
actually spend more time reviewing it
I mean,
after
when
the
it's when
fact.
it's on Amazon, I'll probably force myself to watch it because unfortunately I have to, watch a lot of terrible things. I mean, I just wrote a piece about having to watch like Tim Pool and Alex Jones and stuff like that. So yeah, it's I think this is more punishing though. Alex Jones is at least more entertaining.
Well, let's do a Mystery Science Theater 3000 watch party of it, and we can lampoon it as we watch it.
Yes.
All right.
Sounds
All
good.
right. Awesome. Well, for Zach, I'm Dave. This has been Real Reviews, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.